I am Paulo Cremonese. I'm the fruit and vegetable IPM specialist in the state of Alabama. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about solanaceous crops. So I'm going to include peppers and eggplants on the tomato discussion that we started in this morning to talk about this plethora of pests that affects. And I'll be focusing on arthropod pests. So this includes insects and mites and other uh, uh, pests that can affect this production. So just a brief overview on solanaceous crops. When we're talking about that, we are including all members of the botanical family Solanaceae or nightshades. So this includes tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, potatoes, tomatillo, and tobacco, all from the same family. They have the same characteristics, and most of them are originated from South and Central America. So they are New World species, domesticated species from New World, except eggplants that are originary from Southeastern Asia. And with that high diversity of plants, there is a high diversity of insects and mites that also causes significant economic damage to these crops that we use so much. Well, once again, like in the last time that we talked about curbit pests, I'm gonna talk about a reference literature that we could use. This is the Garden Insects of North America. This is not an ad. It's a very comprehensive book that is readily available, and it's really great for any kind of vegetable pests. It is very didactic, and it has um, very good pictures of the pest. So pest ID is very important in all this. So this is a good option for study. And once again, I'm going to talk about the golden rule when we're talking about chemical control. I'm going to put this slide over here real quick because when we are talking about low risk management is about insecticide control. So insecticide can be used in integrated pest management, not as the only tool, because otherwise we will not integrate with anything. But it should be the last resource and when we are out of any other alternatives. So the golden rule for chemical control in integrated pest management is rotation, rotation, rotation. And I can't stress that enough. This is very important so we can avoid the development of resistance in insects and mites. Um, there are some other resources available here. I'm going to talk about them later, but feel free to take a screenshot here so you can access it later or use your phone. And a little disclaimer here, I'm going to talk about trade and brand names for chemicals, but they are not endorsed. And you always have to keep a record of what works for you. So think about the chemical mode of action in the IREC class on your label. All right, so let's jump into it and talk about caterpillar complex in solanaceous crops. So there are major species, fruit worms, armyworms, hornworms. Some of the examples I give here start with the tomato fruit worm, the beet armyworm, and the tomato and tobacco hornworms. And this is just an example of identification. This is very important because you can define the species that you have. Usually we find more of the tomato hornworm than the tobacco hornworm in the tomato crops, but both of them can be prevalent. This is a beet armyworm here on a bell pepper, and also you can find some loopers. So basically, they cause extensive damage to leaves, flowers, and fruits. They can eat everything because of their chewing mouth parts. Frass and holes in fruit will reduce crop marketability because it affects the direct product that you're trying to produce, they do have a rapid life cycle. They can provide multiple generations in the growing season. So you see movement of the moths, which are the adults. The moths will not cause damage, but they are an indication that you may have problems with caterpillars. They have a high reproductive rate, and this leads to a rapid population if not managed well, or if you lose the timing. Some identifications, a chart here provided by the material of Dr. Ayanava Majonder, just to get a glimpse of identification. Please feel free to print the slide or contact me later. This is very important because if you identify that you have a potentially problematic caterpillar in the terms of insecticide control, like the beet armyworm, then you may reevaluate the chemical product that you're selecting. For example, beet armyworms in West Georgia are showing increased diamide resistance. So we should avoid that at any cost for the control of these caterpillars. However, if you have yellow stripe or armyworm or solid armyworm, that could work well. So for the caterpillar management in the solanaceous crops, some alerts here is that continuous generations happens throughout the season. They have a high damage potential, so even in small populations, they will be voracious in eating both fruits and leaves, and they can be very widespread in top resistance, like the beet armyworm situation. So for that, we have to scout and monitor early season, use crop rotation and sanitation, so get rid of damaged fruits and the crop remainings. So just get rid of that is very important, and because of the pupae and everything that will be in the area. And if available, use resistant or tolerant cultivars. Uh, as discussed before by Dr. De Silva as well. So evaluate some of that, those options like BT technology. For biological control, usually in the area, you can count on the use on the service of parasitoids and predators that are present. So anything that's basically larger than that will be doing their job. But if we have to go for a low risk management, this is the rotation of chemicals you can use, organic phosphate, or you can use a carbamate, proclaim, BTs, a growth regulator like Intrepid. And right here you have the options for diamides, group 28, which is very marked on the branch. You can use that, and this can be also good for thrips management early on in the season, and maybe even some whiteflies. So this is highly recommended in Exero for foliar. But here I just put some asterisks here because of beet armyworm that can be extremely resistant to cyantraniliprole. And Corrigan which is a new technology that can be very useful for that. But again, be mindful this is group 28, so you never don't use Verimark on the drench and later on spray Corrigan Evo. Try to rotate between the groups, the modes of action. Stink bugs, basically we have very different species of stink bugs and true bugs happening in Alabama. These are some of the materials here from Dr. Majonder as well. The brown stink bug is very present, southern green stink bug. Squash bugs can be more problematic for cucurbids. The brown marmorated stink bug, which is an invasive species and it can happen in the field. The harlequin bug is also around, but the big question here for solanaceous is the leaf-footed bug. uh, in our area because it can be very problematic for fruit quality. And why are these so difficult to kill? So we're talking about the large sucking mouthpart pests, not the small ones like whiteflies, aphids and thrips, or spider mites. We're talking about the macro pests. They do have a hard exoskeleton, so they have that protective skin that will reduce penetration of chemicals or biologicals. They are generalists. They have a vast host range. They are extremely mobile, so they will fly and run very fast, and they have a cryptic behaviors. So if they feel like a predator, a big predator, or a crop trait is happening, they can easily drop to the soil and be protected, more protected. They produce aggregation pheromones. So once they find food, they will signalize the other their colleagues to go to that area. So that's why we find a lot of the punctures in the fruits, like especially closer to the calyx of the fruits as well. I'm not sure if I'm using the right morphology trait here. Andre can correct me anytime, but very close to where the fruit is formed is where you will find most of the punctures, and that will cause a lot of fruit loss quality. Uh, there's some low impact of natural enemies, especially if you have using pyrethroids, which will devastate the natural enemies, and stink bugs can be very free to colonize. And also, they are exhibiting some insecticide tolerance due to prolonged exposure to old chemicals, excessive use of pyrethroids and neonics, um, and the environmental backlash. So for the leaf-footed bugs, there are some species here that we'll find. And like I mentioned, you see, so if you have um, this situation right here, where some nymphs will find food, they will signalize the other colleagues, and they will be aggregated, and this will cause extensive damage. So in the adults as well, when they're reproducing, they will do that, and this may cause a heavy fruit drop in eggplants, in tomatoes, like in this example from Dr. Majondra. For stink bug and leaf-footed bug management in solanaceous crops, late season infestations are the most damaging because they will be more associated with the fruits. So there's no rest here. Their critic feeding may not be as easy to detect in the fruits in the beginning, but once the fruit starts to ripe, then they can be more evident. Mobility and reinfestation can be challenging for chemical control. So the situation here is to do frequent and thorough scouting, especially in areas where you have historically had problems with stink bugs. You can use visual or bead cloth methods. So once your plants are tall enough, you can just lay out a black cloth, or a white cloth in between the rows, beat the plants, and if you see consistent amount of stink bugs, like 2 to 5 stink bugs per beating, then you have your action, decision making action. So you use a low risk method like insecticides. Trap crops and border plantings can be useful for both stink bugs and leaf-footed bugs. Sorghum is really good for trapping leaf-footed bugs away from your tomatoes. It's fantastic. So if you use them on the border, you can basically just get them out of there. Eliminate overwintering sites is really important, as most of the species overwinter. So get rid of weeds and be mindful of location of trees and borders. Parasitoids, especially Trissolcus, which is a stink bug egg parasitoid, usually do their work well. So that's very important. And for rotation of chemicals, you could use Vidate, you can use pyrethroids and neonics. Again, they're broad spectrum insecticides, so use it very carefully. And again, rotate. Spider mites, the main problem in the spider mite world is the two-spotted spider mite. They can be very damaging, especially for seedlings. They do have piercing, sucking mouth parts and can cause damage and defoliation. So one of the characteristics is the webbing on the plants. Like in this example here, this is a late infestation of spider mites. So if you start to see these, then you do have a serious problem. Um, they do have a short cycle, 1 to 2 weeks, so they can provide multiple generations in a season. Hot and dry conditions and drought periods are optimal for them, so this will result in outbreaks. And the initial damage because is notable for yellow mottling, scaring and bronzing of the leaf, and the leaf can fall. For the management of spider mites, they do prevalent. They are very prevalent in hot and dry conditions, like I mentioned. So uh, try to try to avoid having dry corners or pockets inside your area, because that can be a hot spot for the spider mites. They develop very quickly resistance to herbicides or insecticides. And absolutely bold and underlined here is that pyrethroids will flare up population. So again, I talked about this in last class, but pyrethroids are like vitamins for the spider mites. So it's not that it will kill their predators or anything. They will do that as well, but they actually have a inverse effect in the body of the spider mites that will make them more reproductive. Um, so that have to be avoided at all costs. So if you have to do a pyrethroid treatment for other pests, be mindful that you may have an outbreak of this pest here. Thorough and constant monitoring is important, so check underside of leaves. This is usually the same recommendation for micropests, the sucking mouth part micropests. Uh, Excess nitrogen fertilization can also be one of the reasons we have an outbreak of uh, spider mites. Promote biological control. There are available options for introduction of predatory mites, but they are usually in the field doing their service as well. And for rotation of chemicals, there are plenty of miticide options like Agrimec, Onager, Optec, Zeal, Ketamite, and Acromite. They're all from different chemical mode of action. You can also have Oberon and Eolfa as insecticide options, or Oberon for insecticide option. Aphid control. So cotton melon aphids or potato aphids that are one of the most important pests for that. Aphids have a very characteristic pear body shape. So here you have 3 different species of aphids. All of them are highly reproductive. You can see an adult female right here with all the nymphs around her. Over here, there's also possible to see. They can vary in color, so you have a multitude of different aphids that can affect your solanaceous. They do have piercing, sucking mouth parts. They removes a lot of sap, and because of that, they will produce a lot of honeydew. Um, that promotes sooty mold growth on top of the leaf. It turns black and it blocks photosynthesis. therefore less production. They also are vectors of important diseases. There are more studies that we need to do on that because um, this is very problematic, and they are they're the very well established plants will tolerate low to medium populations of 1 to 15 aphids per leaflet for tomatoes, for example. But this is a very characteristic infestation of aphids. This is what they look like. This is actually very common as well. Depends on the weather conditions, hot, um, humid conditions, and here a little bit of a glance over the adults. They're extremely high reproductive, so the females will lay um, the the nymphs already. They don't lay eggs, they will lay the nymphs, and usually these nymphs are all females that are already pregnant. So they reproduce like fire, they spread like fire. Also on the same note, kind of include here the flea beetles. So they are small jumping beetles that causing a shot hole damage on leaves. It can be seen here on this tomato plant. The larvae feed on the roots or on the potato developing, like they reduce plant vigor and yield. They have this characteristic canal damage shaped like an arrow S on the surface of the roots that you can find. The early season infestation can severely stunt young plants, and the damage more severe. The more severe damage occurs under hot and dry conditions as well. Um, when the foliation happens over 15% of the leaflet, then you will have economic damage. So these are the recommendations for both aphids and flea beetles managements. So again, avoid pyrethroids and broad spectrum insecticides for this pest. Treat only if at 10 aphids per newly expanded leaf, especially for small, not yet fully established plants. And again, pyrethroids will disrupt the natural enemy balance that will happen. Aphids are, well, they are extremely attracted to parasitic wasps in for ladybugs. So to use pyrethroids is extremely not recommended. Again, like micropests, sucking mouth part uh, insect, check the underside of leaves to see the colonies. They can be, if they're, well, the peach aphid, the Mrs. Persica aphid is a green one. It can be like very isolated. Sometimes you may find it confusing with whitefly infestation because of the white um, exuvia that they leave when they're growing up. But this is you have to check on the other uh, colored insects as well. Check timely planting and harvest reduce water stress on crops and reduce aphid problems. Appropriate plant spacing also provides that microenvironment that will improve the air movement and will reduce the spread of this pests. Like I said, parasitic wasps for aphids, lady beetles, and lacewings, overfly larvae usually suppress their populations. And for both of these pests, the rotation of chemicals that is recommended is Admire, Platin, Octara, Neonix. You can also use Closer and Savento, but they are all from the same class, so be mindful of that. You can also use PQZ, and Full Fuel. And in nursery and organic situations, you can use insecticidal soap like Impede and Safer. Thrips management. So the main species of thrips and some other species will also occur, but this is what we want to focus here is the Western flower thrips. The nymphs are orange yellow to white head in the thorax, and they have this characteristic bands on the abdomen. Uh, but usually we do the correct identification in the lab. They pupate on the ground or debris. The pupa don't move much, but this indicates that they can be they can be provided for wooded areas, close wooded areas, and weeds can provide a population to be prevalent in the area. Tobacco trips also transmits a disease called tomato spotted wilt. This is transmitted by the virus, tomato spotted wilt virus, which happens by horizontal transmission. So only from plant to trips and trips to plant, not throughout the progeny. The leaves feed on the weeds and get inoculated with the virus for life, and they can be transmitted to other plants. And just some key insights onto this TSW disease is that it is spread by thrips, mainly the western flower thrips, affects tomatoes, peppers, and peanuts. So you have to check on the area as well. The symptoms that it causes: stunning, bronzing, and ring spots, necrosis on the formed fruit, like in these examples down here. A little bit of the damage, the management, resistant varieties are the first line of control. Reflective mulch can also be used and is usually very effective as a first line of defense. For monitoring, you have to actively scout fields, use sticky traps, and apply timely controls. So I'll talk about a little bit of that later. In 2020, we have a severe tomato spotted wilt disease outbreak here. These are from farm notes from Dr. Ayanava from this area in Alabama. It was the third severe tomato spotted wilt virus outbreak in 40 years. And it was first noted in July of 2020 by Dr. Ayanava. During a field visit in September, they confirmed the western flower thrips were present in the area, and the virus was confirmed in the very next day. So this is what they can cause to both the fruits and the plants can be destroyed. In 2024, so last year when I first started here, we had another outbreak in the same area. It was the second severe tomato spot wilt virus outbreak in 4 years. So we had three outbreaks in 40 years, but now we had this. Plus, the first line of defenses were being used, so they did have reflective mulch in resistant varieties in this case, but they still had a bunch of symptomatic tomato plants like this. Up to 35% of the plants were infected in some areas, and we collected tomato samples and strips. We confirmed the thrips, and we also confirmed that it was tomato spotted wilt virus in the lab. So what happened then? Why did that happen? Well, 2024 was a really good condition for Western flower thrips. They were really lucky to find Alabama in the drought situation that we have, and it was very hot. So that can basically push the insects to break the resistance barriers that they put, like reflective mulch in the host plant resistant. Refuge areas around, like weeds and tall trees, are also making difficult to control. So weeds like morning glory can also be host for this pests. That's what probably happened. Preventive management tactics. Again, the first lines of defense, talk about that. Monitoring using blue sticky cards. If you find more than 5 to 10 trips per week, then you have your action threshold. Use resistant varieties, reflective mulch, do your weed control, and provide good conditions for predatory mites, pirate bugs, entomopathogenic fungi, especially for greenhouse and nurseries. That's still the first line of defense. It's not because we had an outbreak that we'll need to relax on those. It's still very important. If we didn't have this in that situation, then we would have absolutely devastating losses for sure. Use of cover cropping can be something that we have to study, especially because to provide refuge areas for thrips. Spray coverage with preventive applications, we need to be careful as well, just not to flare up thrips between sets of tomatoes. Uh, so that's also very important to be mindful. And repeated application with the same product is absolutely a no-no. So again, rotation is the key. And this is one of the thrips management in tomatoes designed by Dr. Ayanava. Feel free to take a print of that as well, and consult this. But this is one of the management situations that we can use here in Alabama. For trips management. So monitoring, like I said, inspect plant materials, use blue sticky cards for early detection. For management, check plant materials, screen vents, and sanitation. If you have a greenhouse and growing your seedlings on the greenhouse to avoid bringing those problems to the field. Use of biological control. You can disseminate Neocegus, cucumbers, and Umbilicaceus swerski. They provide good control of thrips early on. And the pirate bug or insidious flower bug can also be used for all thrip stages for summer conditions. For organic methods, use of spinosad in is very good for that. And the fungus Bavaria bassiana, like Microtrol O, is also very good. And again, for conventional rotation, rotation, rotation. That's the for that you can recall to this management option here. Jumping on to whiteflies. So whiteflies are more of a problem in the hot and dry situations, especially in southern Alabama. The main species is absolutely the sweet potato whitefly, or also known as the silverleaf whitefly, especially for squash growers. They do have piercing, sucking mouth parts. They cause leaf yellowing and wilting if they are in a high presence. And they also produce a sticky honeydew just like aphids, but they will be exclusively living on the underside of leaves. So if you see whiteflies on top of the leaves, they are just parking there. They are going to find a way to find the underside. They transmit viruses. One of the most prominent ones is tomato yellow leaf curl virus, TYLCV. This is a picture of what it looks like. One can say that this can be confused with nutrient deficiency, but you always have to check if you have whiteflies in your area. Like I said, they build up rapidly under warm and dry conditions. Whiteflies they do prefer extremely dry conditions over everything. They have a high reproductive rate, and they can also be presenting insecticide resistance, which complicates management. For preventive management tactics, again, you can use the first line of defense, just like the for thrips. Like I say, the populations develop resistance quickly, so we have to always rotate the chemicals. The virus transmission, although they can occur even at low densities, so even with the first line of defenses. They can be migrating from other vegetables in cotton, so they're very generalist. So if your neighbor is harvesting cotton, or some other defoliation of other plants, then be prepared that you can have a flare-up migration of whiteflies into your area. Consistent monitoring is important. You can use yellow sticky traps and can inspect the leaves. So if you see the first whiteflies coming up, be mindful that you have to act quickly later on, especially with hot conditions. Remove and destroy the infected plants promptly. This can reduce a little bit of that because of the nymphs on that. Again, use reflective mulch in our row covers to deter infestations. Like I say, it may not deter virus transmissions, but even because even a small population of whiteflies can transmit that, but it will help reduce population buildup. And for biological control, you can rely on the service of predators like lady beetles can be important. Some spiders can do that work as well, but also the parasitic wasps like in cars here, which is very present in some areas. But the insecticide options that we have here, and I have even a classification because I have been working with sweet potato whiteflies for a while since I was in Georgia. So you have a very good plus option, which would be your top shelf option, which is using Savento, which is a neonic or a kind of neonic, and Exrail, which is a diamine. So far, they are the best options that you have for whiteflies. Another very good options, they can be very good for, depending on the population, is use the neonics like Venom, Azel, and Admire. Although Admire, we are seeing a little bit of population growing up, some tolerance growing up. So we need to study that. And you can also use an insect growth regulator like NEC. Good options include PQZ, Movento, and Courier, and some fair options you could use just for the sake of rotation is Tarek, Belief, and Belay. But again, I'll stress this, and again, don't forget the golden rule is to use it in rotation. And I think this will be the last insect pest that I'm gonna talk about is pepper weevil, more specifically for peppers. So this is not a generalist. Uh, Pest is very specific for this crop, for bell peppers and hot peppers. It's a small beetle, so it is from the same genera of the cotton boll weevil, actually. So it's a major pest of peppers and eggplants, although in eggplants it's less problematic. Um, it's mostly for the flower production, but it's not gonna be so much of a problem. The adults feed on the blossoms and immature fruits. They prefer the very small buttons, very small pods of the peppers, and they will absolutely destroy. They absolutely will make a huge drop, a huge fruit loss. The larvae develop inside the fruit and it's hidden from view. Sometimes you can find a small hole um, in the fruit. I think I have a picture right here, but sometimes it's maybe it's too late. This is what you will find on the fruit drops, on the dropped fruit. Um, so their infestations causes heavy fruit and flower drop, severely reducing yield up to 100%. So it's the prediction may be happening. You may have a lot of peppers, but sometimes you have so much fruit drop that your harvest is not going to compensate your production. So it is 100% loss. It's not so prevalent in Alabama as for now, but this is our sign to stay alert because our neighbors, Georgia and Florida, have problems with that in their crops. It's difficult to detect early. The damage becomes apparent too late. And the management is also complicated by rapid life cycle, cryptic habits, as the beetle is very good to hide, and limited chemical effectiveness on top of all of that. Once infestation is established, it's very difficult to control. Like I said, cryptic feeding behavior protects the larvae from insecticides, but the management options that we have is to use some available pheromone traps for early detection and monitoring, which is very important. Probably remove and destroy infested fruits. So if you have history of that in your area, that's already some alerts that you can use Also, crop rotation is important to break that cycle, especially because the beetle will overwinter and come back in the springtime. For biological control, some parasitoids like Cattlelacus may do their work, but they are not as effective. And the control options that we have is Vidate, Ectara Venom, Diamide Exero, and you can use kaolin clay as protective barrier, but the chemical control is really, really not as good for this pest. Again, I had this slide in the previous class, but for insect management considerations, it's always important to consider the pollinators. It's very critical to any kind of produce. Bees are essential part of the production, in this case of all vine crops. So placing hives in protected areas at the edges of fields is very important. They forage usually within a quarter mile. So this will be good to improve pollination of large fields. And organic control tactics that you use: avoid highest pest seasons, remove pest residue, sanitation is really important, intercrop to increase diversity, and hide the crop so the insects will be attracted to some other non-cash crops, mulch, living or other, use of host plant resistance where available, like BTs, barriers and traps, and biological-based sprays on BTs, spinosads, Beauveria fungus, azadirachtin or other oils, and some nematodes for pests that occur in the roots, in the soil, and natural enemy release and increase is very important. These are some IPM available resources, so you can always consult IRAC to know what class of insecticide chemicals you have, the options. You have the Southeastern Vegetable Crop Handbook available online, and I also have physical copies, so you can contact me to try and get one of the physical copies. Here is really good for management of diseases and pests, and also other considerations for vegetables in the southeast. So contact any regional extension agent or myself. And some phone apps available is the Farming Basics apps, which is from our extension group. And the MyAPM for vegetables is a really good resource. So feel free to take a screenshot and get all this information. Is really helpful. And with that, I'm gonna finish my class, and I thank you once again for paying attention. I'll take any questions that you have. Feel free to contact me. You have my number, you have my address, and you can also check out my LinkedIn in my profile page down there.